Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Cooking with Big Mark.
Good afternoon, folks. Today is going to be another saucy session, if you will. 2 weeks ago, we spoke about the famous white sauce bechamel. And last week, we talked about its compatriots and the famous French fry mother sauces. And the sauce we're going to talk about today is not one of those, but something that's a pan sauce, done a la minute very quickly when you were sauteing either meat or fish of some kind. And you want to come out, really, if it's done properly, like some of these very intense French sauces, which take a lot of time to make. This just takes a few short seconds. And what you're going to base the pan sauce is what they call a fond. And those are the bits of brown bits that cling to the bottom of the pan when you saute something. But you want to be sure you're doing it in a metal pan, not a non-stick skillet. Because by the very nature of non-stick, it doesn't build up stuff, slides off it. So you want to use a metal, aluminum-based, copper-clad type of thing, heavy pan to do this. And what you do is once you do the meat is, whatever the product you're sauteing is done, take it off, put it to one side, and then you do this very quick little sauce, which is achieved by deglazing it, sometimes with either wine or stock or boxed broth, beef or chicken broth, and reducing that down, then adding aromatics and other things to it. So we'll just go through that process and what that is and what it entails. The biggest part of that really is what they call the mise en place. That's the French term for having everything go. Since it is very quick sauce, you always want to have everything all set and convenient. And it means having all the different equipment. First, the pan we've talked about. The setup would take, whatever broth or wine you're going to use, have it in a measuring cup set to go. Then any other type of aromatics, whether it's garlic or shallots, herbs, sprigs, whatever, you know where they are so you get your hand on them. And then salt and pepper handy. And you might want to have another little bowl ready to take out. If you've sauteed with a lot of fat, all you really want to have left when you start the sauce is like 1.5 to 2 tablespoons. So you might want to pour off just, some of the excess fat or oil, whatever it is. And then a whisk of some kind, or usually the best thing is you have a wooden spatula to scrape these little bits up. So that's all that's what they call the mise en place. And what you do then is just, all right, you get the pan cooked, you get the meat sauteed, you take it out, put it off to one side, you add your wine, or whatever other liquid you're going to do, and you want to reduce that down so it gets to a little bit like a syrupy consistency. And then if you're going to add in things, now in the beginning, a lot of people will add shallots or onion to start with, because that's always gives you a little extra flavor. And those are good in the beginning, but at the end, when you say things like this tarragon or chevre or parsley or things, you want to put those in at the end because you'll get the matter, that's at their freshest state rather than getting cooked. Other things you can add at the end would be lemon, mustards, all kinds of combinations of other sauces that you like, whatever flavors you happen to have. And then the final thing is, which I usually take off after it's reduced down and I get the consistency I want, I pull it off to one side and add whole butter, and that should be cold butter because you want to get the proper emulsion, and that's the only way it works is with cold butter. It melts slowly and elides properly. So that's really it. The other night I had some meatloaf left over, and there was a little bit of some onions with it. I had some mushrooms would cook with it when I originally had it. But I sauteed it in a little bit of olive oil and butter. I usually like to mix when I saute a little bit of both, one for flavor and one for so it doesn't burn. And I just sauteed them on both sides, get them warm to where I put them off to one side. And I just threw in some white wine that I had and some beef stock, and just reduced that down, add a little bit of butter to it, and boom, it's a great sauce, and raise that little meatloaf up to a level that probably didn't expect to be involved in. And especially in this day and age when you've got inflation so high, you now go to some lesser cuts of meat, or a lot more pork and chicken as opposed to beef and lamb. These little sauces can really add sort of a grand elegant elegancy to the meal. So that is what we call a pan sauce. It's done very, very quickly, in and out, and on the service plate to enhance whatever kind of meat or fish you're doing.
Cool. So I went kind of abstract last week. I'm going to go very specific this week in what we're discussing. I do some consulting work for a catering company on the higher end of the spectrum. And recently they asked me to put together 4 cocktail pairings for a catered event they were doing. And it's interesting pairing cocktails with food as opposed to wine. I mean, I think wine is inherently more friendly. You know, Charlie Trotter famously would not have any hard liquor in the restaurant at all because he didn't feel like, you know, cocktails paired with food, especially delicate preparations of food. But I think the tide has kind of gone in the other direction these days. And what you're doing is the same. You're trying to either, you know, find things that are complementary and similar, or something that plays against a flavor or an ingredient that you're working with. So for this thing, I did the first course was a salad of kale, candied walnuts, cranberry, and goat cheese. And what I did with that was kind of a play, as I've mentioned before, you know, some people are more inspired by sort of historical cocktails and some people are more inspired by food, and I'm very food inspired in my cocktail making. So this was actually originally based on how much I love the parsley tahini from Trader Joe's. So what the cocktail was toasted black and regular sesame seeds that were left in vodka overnight to really give it flavor. And then I blended fresh parsley and lemon juice, probably about equal parts lemon juice and water, and then cooked some fresh dill in a honey syrup with coriander, and then finished all that up with some cider. The second course was winter pan-seared scallops with parsnip puree, Vidalia onion, apple, and carrot. These folks are into mezcal, so I did a simple mezcal cocktail for this. And it was literally just a cracked ginger infused reduced apple cider. So that played off the apple notes. And of course, apple is complementary to all the other flavors, which is why it was in the dish in the first place. And that was apparently a favorite last night at the event. Third course was lamb chops with Brussels sprouts, garlic, rosemary, and potatoes. A bourbon cocktail, and for this, essentially a play on a bourbon smash. Although everything needed to be pre-batched, you didn't need to have people smashing the mint a la minute. So I made a really nice mint syrup with just white sugar, and then a combination of lime, orange, and lemon juice. A small amount of lemon and orange, a lot of lime to give it some vivaciousness. And then, of course, that citrus and acidity is going to play really nicely against the herbal sweetness of the mint syrup. And of course, brings to mind another classic cocktail, that you have at the Derby. So the last item was the dessert of an interactive s'mores bar with marshmallows, graham crackers, milk, and chocolate. And per the client's request, I did an espresso martini for this. So the espresso martini is having a grand resurgence right now, and with good reason. It's a, you know, sort of a legal speedball in effect, because you're getting the depressant and the caffeine hitting you simultaneously. Apocryphally, this was created by a barman for a model who wanted to both relax and be able to stay up and enjoy the fete. But in my case, what I did was I started with, again, an overnight treatment of vodka, this time with vanilla bean. And I really like the Mexican vanilla beans from Penzeys, and luckily there's one near where I work. So I went, got some of that, was able to do an overnight, you know, it bloomed out into the vodka and tastes amazing. It totally, if you're used to like the McCormick's, it's whole different ball game. And then use Mr. Black coffee liqueur, which is a slightly sweetened Australian cold brew liqueur, which I think is really of top quality. And then, of course, cold brew, I use La Colombe. And surprisingly, the La Colombe in cans is about, I don't know, 2/3 the price of a large plastic container of it. So I was rather happy about that. It's good stuff. Really pretty much as good as the stuff they sell in the store, which again is kind of impressive. And then my two secret weapons when making an espresso martini, I think we've discussed this on the show before, are a little bit of salt, which is almost like a salt in a chocolate chip cookie. It does the same thing. The vanilla bean, it would be another secret to this. And then my final move that I like to do is make a nice thick demerara syrup and add Szechuan peppercorn and star anise whole and cook that down. It really adds I've done a full-on garam masala type spice blend before for espresso martinis, but it really adds an interesting note. So it's not just this sort of, iced coffee with vodka, but actually something that's quite nuanced and has levels. So in any case, thank you all for joining us for Cooking with Big Mark. I'm going to stop the recording before the computer stops it for me. A little low on memory out here in Chicago. And thank you, Dad, very much.
Thank you.
All right.